Should be 2024 start.
Part of the grant, will it be able to be kind of beautification added to it, not just a concrete?
Yeah, it would be, concrete lining would be phase 1, and then on phase 2, go to phase 2 now. A total of almost $1 million for beautifying the banks.
Thanks, yeah.
And go ahead, go one more. You'll see the problem areas that we have, and some encroachments from El Paso Independent School District. They encroached by, what was it, Jay? 6 feet, I guess, 6 to 8 feet in some areas? 10 feet in some areas. So this would give us a chance, once we, plus we're, the medical hospital is willing to fund part of the survey, and we would match with half. And so we plan on getting all this stretch area surveyed, and then that way I can approach El Paso Independent School District and the other 2 schools that are there to see what we can work out with them. Go to the next one now.
Would it be too much of a cumbersome exercise if we, like what you said, the EPSD and all these other entities, but including the city and other governmental agencies to build off of this grant? In other words, like a, you know, like the starting point. In other words, really make it a nice, because it's really a key area of downtown that could, instead of just doing a basic little improvement, really making a statement with having the city involved and so on.
Right.
But then again, if it gets too complicated, we don't want to kill the deal either, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Everybody's involved, TxDOT, the city of El Paso, the Medical Center of Americas, they all want this area. You know, we've been having pressure for years now with people wanting to do different things in this area. And it's a good opportunity for us to concrete line our channel and beautify the banks, and where Pete wouldn't have to go in there and attempt to mow. Go to the next one. So here you have part of Jefferson High School. We know they're encroaching, and then you'll see TxDOT's real interested because they want to do some beautification to Paisano also, and they want to make some deceleration lanes to unload kids and so on for schools. And
then TxDOT's encroaching too. So.
Right, and then there's a lot of housing on the opposite side of Paisano. They've got that new development there by the Coliseum. Go to the next one.
Are you gonna narrow it down or not?
Yeah, it would have to be narrowed. It's going to be up. Al will have to design it, but this is where it would start. Phase 1. Go to the next one.
Just on the curve.
That's the part.
Yeah, there was an erosion problem there, so it's not lined on both sides.
Go to your next one now. You'll see the vegetation. This is that first bridge where the zoo starts.
That's an exhibit.
Just shows what
That's the rainforest?
Pete has to deal with, and he just mowed this 3 months ago.
At least.
And these pictures were taken last week. So it's a constant battle. You can see it's.
And to Mike's point, the zoo is thinking about it, or talking about it.
That'd be good jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah, they are. We've been meeting with them, and they're real interested. This new director that they have, he's been talking to the mayor and the city manager about some funding.
That's great.
And we're always doing repairs to our fence. You know, we replaced the fence 8 years ago, and look at the condition of it. That people are always tearing it down or.
That's our new rotating design.
Running into it. So it's a constant
Those
battle.
spinning doors used to work.
Yeah.
Not this one.
We got the rotation at Rock River.
The bearings are off a little bit.
Go to your next one.
Would put it on the ground, would that be out of light, or does that have to be exposed, so that's too expensive?
It would be
It's about 10 times more.
Yeah, it'd be too expensive.
Just an idea.
We haven't gotten to there.
They're real interested in us beautifying the canal and concrete lining it, and then them jumping on board for beautification of the banks. Okay. go to your next map. See, there's different areas, different issues, different problems. But it's
Have a
a
huge amount of utilities and crossings.
constant battle with
Do you
weeds.
have a timeline of when, if those to go, what the timeline would be,
If
2020?
we could start, if we would get we were successful and got the grant, we could start next year. Because the first phase, they would fund us next year.
You don't have any costing done on this, and so the first, it's sort of a chicken and egg problem, so we've gotta get money to do the survey, so we first have to figure out what we own and what we don't own, and to pick up all the existing conditions and all the utilities. We know that we studied it, Judy and I worked on it years ago with AECom, I guess it was
Right.
somebody else before that, but, they did some survey work for, part of it is for the stormwater, so we know that there's a lot of problems out there. Well, you saw one of them, like that pedestrian bridge, so they're gonna have to take care of that, it's gotta come out. And you saw it just a minute ago, you saw some pictures of utilities that were crossing below the flow line grade, which shouldn't have ever been approved, but they did, and it was before our time. So there's just a lot of, it's a very intense area. The other problem is we have this tremendous sediment load and deposition in that area, so we've got to do some modifications in the downstream to build a place to clean it out and to be able to transport all this sediment, because as soon as we put concrete lining in, then it's very difficult to dig out sediment without damaging the lining. And we talked about building a sediment trap in this long straight reach, but because of the beautification, they don't think that's compatible. So this reach right here is.
So we're talking about moving it
That's what he's explaining.
to the start of down here on Paso Drive.
So they've got, and that's where with the zoo project where it sort of fell apart, besides they wanted it underground for 800 feet, but we said we're gonna put it underground and we have to trap the sediment before it goes underground. We're not gonna be able to clean it out anymore, we're gonna catch it. So we had proposed this part to be underground, which wasn't too bad, I think that was a $2 million too, but we wanted another $1 million to build a sediment trap up here and a truck ingress and egress so that we could clean it. And they felt like they didn't understand that they were the same system, and they just said they didn't have enough money, they said, or I'm not sure what it was saying. But here, same thing with this one, we put all this in lining down here with no sediment removal. Very difficult to remove sediment in these residential areas. Last time we did a big sediment removal, it's been quite a while, but we did a lot along this area. It's not easy anyplace, but if we can design it to move all the sediment down here and sluice it to this point, then maybe we have a fighting chance to get this done. But once we beautify it, it's gonna be pretty hard to put a front loader in there.
You're getting pretty close to that dumped, what is it, drain to the river, aren't you?
Yeah, we don't use that anymore, we don't have the water to, and that was used when that was our sediment control facility, the Escarte Wasteway. But we bypass a significant amount of water on a 24-hour basis during the entire year because we have Riverside Dam to re-divert it at. And we haven't had Riverside Dam since '96.
So that old security wasteway,
It's an emergency wasteway now.
it's an emergency wasteway now, but I was thinking that maybe you could somehow incorporate it onto your sediment, but not really.
Not
I'm
really.
not
We had
gonna
talked
say
at one time about supplying the county, the parks, using the park as a reservoir and a sedimentation basin, but that was inconsistent with what they wanted to use it for, and there was a lot of money involved in doing that.
I really remember that.
And so that fell through, and so now I think to make this project work, we just gotta build a collection thing. We're sort of off the picture, but what Mr. Reyes was saying, right, in this area is our next shot at it. We can't let this stuff, Pete can talk about.
Is that right where Paisano goes north?
That's El Paso Drive.
Here's
Oh, that's
Paisano.
El Paso, okay, I got you. All right. That's
So
it.
going back to, Al, the survey and so forth, in the initial part of this grant, I know you've broken up in phases, but would there be a design of like a master plan initially? That would incorporate what we're talking about now, but also facilitate any possible future expansion that could be, that way the construction starts, and all of a sudden, the ones that got delayed and jumped on the bandwagon, just jump on the bandwagon and.
That's at the very end of the whole thing, almost before you start construction. What has to be done first is the survey, and the second has to be the hydraulic design and the sediment design. So that's sort of a high level that we do in all these projects, report that looks at the hydraulics and the sediment transport and says, what is feasible, what can we even do? It's not even in the design phase, it's looking at feasibility phase, and then we do the preliminary costing, order of magnitude costing, not even the detailed costing. And that just tells us if we can even start. Every time we've done that on this area, we've hit a brick wall with funding, that there wasn't enough money to do this stuff. And, you can't burden the district, it's a third-party use. So by our tax code, we're prohibited from burdening our taxpayers for something that's not their thing. But if we can get a synergistic thing out, like he said, it benefits the district. Right now, we get a sediment removal facility, then we can, and using grant money and things like that. So survey first, feasibility study and rough order of magnitude costing, then you go into an actual design study, and at that point, the master plan should be part of that, what you talked about, which would be very important, I think, to show that is there money from all these sources to get this thing done.
No, we don't have to do it all, just do what the specific is, which is for the grant.
We can't do the grant unless it's feasible and we have the money to do all of our parts of it.
Right, just identify what's our part.
Right, exactly. So if they don't come back in and put in the turf or the landscaping and stuff like that, that's not our part, right?
Right.
As long as we've got our right-of-way secured and that we
But
got.
it's,
So we have a commitment from the Medical Center of the Americas to put in $40,000 for the survey and engineering. And I told Mary that I wanted to fund another $40,000 in our next budget. So we have a total of 80 to do this.
Well, most of their campus is to the north of that, isn't it, true?
Yes,
Yeah,
but they're buying more and more land. I think they just purchased all this right in here.
Okay.
And so, I mean, they're expanding.
So,
And then Texas has money.
the Medical Center of America's Chewy and I attended. Oh, actually, I went to a meeting that they're building over here off I-10. It's a clear glass building. But the Medical Center of America's, in conjunction with Texas Tech, so their master plan starts at 54 I-10 down to Paisano. So the plan is to purchase all of this, obviously not the cemetery, but all this
Except the
along,
cemetery.
and all the way up to Paisano for the medical center, the Texas Tech campuses, and expand UMC, and they're gonna move, basically take care of that entire portion all the way to I-10. And the Franklin Canal is the bottom boundary, so that's why they're working, I guess, trying to get that master plan with us as well.
We're vague in what we're putting in.
their master plan, you're talking about the master plan's developed or is being?
They're working. Medical Center of Americas and with Texas Tech and UMC, they're putting a master plan together from I-10 to Franklin Canal, Paisano to US 54.
For the property use.
Now,
Property.
Yeah, and they bought a lot of land already.
Al, can we talk about the form of the resolution that you got in the?
I haven't looked at the resolution, I think.
I
Well,
don't
let
know
me
if
just
we're ready
ask
for
some,
that.
let me ask some questions.
I didn't write it.
Are we ready for
Who
that?
is,
All right.
over there, are we?
No, I don't think we're quite there yet. Let's
I think
finish.
it's right there. Let Joey finish, and then we'll go to that.
Okay.
So what we need from the board is the resolution of approval that we are willing to.
We are.
Wait
Okay.
a minute, let me see if he's got it on the presentation. So.
Okay, Al,
I didn't write you need to ask Chewy about it, I didn't.
okay, Al, Chewy,
Yes, sir.
who is the Transportation Policy Board?
The MPO board, it's comprised of all elected officials. We've got city, state, county. You've got the mayor there, the county judge, the city representatives, some of the.
Are you on the board?
Am I on the board? No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Somehow, in our resolution, we've got to indicate who we're talking about.
No. Well, yeah, but look at the movie.
Just Transportation Policy Board, out of the blue, is an unknown entity.
Okay, we can put their,
Something
But
to
we need to,
identify.
now we're gonna be
who
prohibited.
their members are.
Well, you don't necessarily have to do that if there's another way. I don't know what it would be, because I haven't seen their.
Joey, are you through with this? If not, we can bring the lights up.
Yes, I'm done.
All right, bring the lights up so we can read what you're talking about.
Okay, this is on,
Yeah.
this is
Al,
Exhibit A,
did you send me
Yeah,
a digital comment of this?
Sure. It's-
well, A,
Chewy or?
It's that resolution in support of the Franklin Canal MCA Trail Project,
Right.
correct?
Okay, do y'all all see the resolution?
Right.
Okay, I'm just concerned that we have to make clear who it is we're dealing with. And I don't know how you can identify them, but you know, you might insert something like the Transportation Policy Board as defined in that certain agreement dated such and such. I don't know how to do it.
I think this is just a preliminary resolution.
Right.
And that anything that once we have a contract or an agreement, we have to bring that back to the board once it's fully defined. This is just sort of
Yeah.
very early in the process.
And the
Okay,
end-
well, see, you look down at section 3,
Yeah. So,
you've got in the resolution, we're committing to fund a minimum local cash match of 20% of the total project cost.
Right,
Is that cash or in-kind?
that's cash, but it can be used as a. And the MPOs, Jim, were formed by the state of Texas.
we're responsible for the cost overruns?
In section 4, yeah, it says will be responsible for any cost overruns.
Yeah, that's gotta be changed.
Yeah,
We
we
can't
can
be
change it.
responsible for other people's cost overruns.
Well, see, I would like this resolution to be resolved that the district supports the formation or the participation in the Franklin Canal and MCA Trail Project as shown in the attached draft agreement or something like that.
Yeah, we don't have such an agreement.
Why don't we have a rewrite of this thing?
We
Get,
can do that.
you know, Chuy and get Jim and Maria to look at this thing and figure out how to write
And
this
see
thing
on the second
properly.
page,
Do we have to need approval now? Can we wait
No,
till
we-
a month?
No, we can hold up.
All right.
on the second page, the way this thing is prepared, it has a signature for Johnny. Johnny doesn't sign resolutions that are set forth in the minutes.
Why don't we do this? Y'all, you look at it, get together with Maria and look at it, and let Chuy put his input in, and Al, and get back to us next month.
What's
Okay.
the deadline for this grant?
It's not till October.
Now,
Because technically, I mean, we could actually approve this with the corrections and the
no, I wouldn't
necessary.
do that, I wouldn't do that.
Why?
This is too expensive, too involved, too much money involved.
We can hold up a month,
Can we go with
there's no
this?
problem.
Now, on the second set, you've got 2 resolutions apparently, and
Right,
I
it's
didn't
phase one
see
and
it
phase
until
two.
this morning. What's the difference in the two?
Phase 1 and phase 2 of the project. It's different funding. Same entity, the MPO, but different year of funding. In other words, we'll do phase 1 first.
Yeah, I see, it's set out in section 1 of the second resolution.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, as prepared, that shows the signature of Johnny and of course, if Johnny's not here, you expect it to be ours. But he doesn't sign resolutions that are set forth in the minutes.
Is that all right? Why don't we get the legal look at this, see if it's all right? I think in general, the sense of the board is, we can get this worked out. I don't see why we wouldn't be
That was
supportive of that.
It would
but
be
we
a
have
very-
discussion.
So,
real
yeah,
good project for us.
and basically,
Right.
get Jim a copy of it, Maria a copy of it, Al a copy of it, everybody put a notes on it and put it together, then we're all in consensus on the next board meeting, and we're all in agreement.
Right, and see in the minutes for today's meeting, on this item, you just show no action taken, because you didn't formally adopt everything.
But I'd like to see that you guys have talked before the meeting, the
Right.
next meeting. That we're all in agreement, because that way we're not back and forth.
No, you're not gonna pass anything that's not specified.
Absolutely,
You gotta specify.
but it's specified before.
So what I would say is, you talked about the item, because it's on the agenda,
Correct. No action,
but no action taken.
That's fine.
because we're not taking it
Yeah, you don't take the action today, that's all I'm saying.
You have to take no action, right, Al?
yet. Right.
Right.
Just move on to the next one.
And then,
You opened the subject, and you're going along with it, but you couldn't complete it today because the document's not ready.
No action.
and then if we can go to item D, it's a report, this will be a little presentation by Al and Pete on the failure of a sewer line that went underneath our Franklin Canal. That actually caused some damage to our Franklin Canal, collapsed the canal, so we had to shut it down for about 5 days.
What area?
Contamination of
At San Marcial and the Franklin Canal.
Okay.
It was an old, 100-year-old clay sewer line, still in
The old
existence.
clay,
Yeah.
Hang on, Chewy, I want to ask about the original grant request.
Uh-huh.
A couple of things. He's going back.
I'm going back, sorry. I'm there, I'm almost, sorry, I had it right where I
That's
wanted
right.
to be there.
Yeah, that's right.
Didn't
Tell
pass
us
it.
where the grant amount is X amount, the total cost that, so we get the grant, who's paying for the remainder of the, that's gonna be like 300,000? See on the bottom?
The 22.5%.
Yeah, is that what that is?
That's just an estimate, George. So
Yes, I know, but,
what he's saying is that grant amount shows to be 1 million,
yeah,
and then you, down
Well,
below.
now, we're just getting 22.5%.
Right.
Right, but and I think what the difference is misstated. The total grant is that 1.375, right? Would be El Paso County supplying.
The total project is 1.37, the grant is 1 million, we put up 310,000.
okay, that's what I was.
Okay, but the way that's stated, you'd think that we put up 22.5 of the 1
Of
million.
the grant, yeah, that is stated wrong here. So the total cost, I
I think
believe.
that's what George called.
Yes, and then I think on the construction site there, unless we're retroactively gonna save a bunch of water, isn't that supposed to be 2024?
Yeah, that was.
Yes.
Yeah. we were-
Yeah,
Okay.
that was just a typo.
Okay.
Oh, a good
Going
catch.
back.
It's a time machine.
Yeah,
Part of it.
Special water.
yeah,
Just the water savings, the maintenance, I mean, it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
heck of a project that will save us and Pete a lot of headaches in that area.
It's a very good grant, too.
it's probably well worth going after, but just clean it up a little bit and let's come back next meeting.
Okay.
We don't, just so you guys know, we don't have any costing on this project right now.
Not
There's
yet.
been any
Right.
costing done.
Right,
We don't even have a survey, so.
right.
So that's a idea, a lowball number?
I don't know, you know, we use, we've got some numbers that we use to estimate based on the linear feet of other projects, but this is a very
These are-
unique project.
These are estimates up after our concrete lining of our
Past
experience
Right,
and so on.
Past
Texas
experience
20,
Right.
records.
Uh-huh.
And so, then, you know, if we encounter a whole bunch of sewer lines that gotta be relocated, then, you know, we've gotta work through that process to make sure that the water utility, El Paso Water.
You're expecting it to be a lot more expensive, right?
I don't know, I would never, nothing's ever cheaper than you expected,
No,
right?
but in your costing, basing your past performance, you have discovered existing utility lines, so there is a percentage that you typically have an idea of.
This is a unique place.
of.
This is different than the
Yeah.
last one we
He's
did.
talking about cushion.
A cushion, in other words,
I haven't
you
done
always
it.
put a cushion, I mean.
20% contingency.
Well, there you have it, then that's included.
I don't know if there's a contingency.
We
I
should.
don't-
When you go after,
I didn't do it, I didn't do any of this.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, I didn't.
when you go after grants, you can't put a cushion in there, right, Eva?
Well, with the federal government, they don't let you.
I will leave that for policy to decide.
In the engineering methods, there's a whole costing,
There's a
he knows
safety-
familiar with
There's
it.
a safety factor always.
There's a procedure how you do costing, so there's different levels of costing. So we're at the rough order of magnitude, which allows a contingency typically someplace between 20 and 50%. That means you don't know enough about the project to be able to price it on doing that.
See,
The
next motion came.
The issue here, I think, isn't so much that we know how much it is to concrete line it, that we've got a good handle on. I think the issue here is, for example, what we're gonna talk about in just in a minute, if we run across a sewer line that needs to be relocated, that cost alone for that relocation could be $250,000. We don't know that, it's an unknown. And we have to come up with procedures we've always done with TxDOT in the city, like their Alameda 20, where they pay that cost.
Right,
Those
that
unknowns.
wouldn't be on our nickel.
Wouldn't be on our nickel, we
That's the
set it
important
up.
part right there.
And so we gotta get all that in place, you know, it's like any project. The first thing we gotta get done is a feasibility study about how the hydraulics are worth and where we get rid of the sand. We know that we have a tremendous sediment problem there, and we've gotta be able to move that sediment down to a location we can extract it. Same problem we have in the zoo is proposing this, and we'll talk
If we
about
can
that.
get it
a little
done,
more.
that'll be great to have that, where you envision it, that would be great. Help the zoo, help us.
Help to get these trespass or these encroachment issues resolved.
Right.
Fix some of the crossings that we have right now that we know aren't acceptable to us. So it's a win, clearly a win-win.
Did you mention how much the grant is for? I mean, there's the cost, but how much is in the fund in the,
There's 1.4 million available every year.
oh, okay, so we're pretty much tapped out.
Right.
Well, but we could look at a multi-year funding too.
Right.
Oh, okay,
That's why we have phase 1 and phase 2.
gotcha.
And we may end up having to have 3 phases, I don't know, if we get enough money.
Okay.
Anyways, too many, it's
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Now, back to that sewer failure, you said it was way down here on the lower end, right?
San Marcial, yeah, San Marcial is actually where
No.
Bowie High School
Oh,
is.
that's, yeah.
right in the middle.
Where that
So
Whataburger
right
is.
in there, okay.
Where that Whataburger, that's San Marcial, that goes right
It's all repaired
towards the
now?
Franklin.
Beach gonna show us pictures.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I've got one more comment.
Is there damages for the city on this?
They paid for
No, no.
everything.
The El Paso Water contacted John,
I know, one more
and
comment.
they covered all the.
We got it covered, okay.
All right, go ahead, Jim.
The female giraffe at the zoo had a baby giraffe this weekend.
Oh,
Hey,
good.
right.
Let's pass out cigars.
I say we name it Franklin.
Hey, that's a good name, I like that.
Hopefully it's a male.
Let's see here, you did all that, didn't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's a Franklin female.
Okay, well then it's universal, I can name it Franklin.
Okay. All right, well, that takes care
So
of it.
this isn't that far away from where we were just talking. I mean,
No, not
as
at
things
all.
go, it's in the neighborhood, sort of.
Right, well, that's actually where the sewer collapsed.
That's what I mean,
Is that
we're
where
in
it
that.
is?
Don't have,
Well,
don't have a
we
good
got you
lawyer.
next, do you wanna do your district engineering thing, or do you?
Well, we do have this under his, so we're still under general
Oh,
manager.
we're still under general manager?
So
Okay.
Peter and I will tag team
So,
under
so
Jay.
what this occurred on a Thursday at noon time, more or less,
More or less, yes.
that the sewer line collapsed. And what happened was there was a city streets vehicle coming down San Marcial, and they fell into a sinkhole. And then water started coming out, and it was sewer water, and went into a couple of homes there. So
Back to toilets.
yeah, so after the street collapsed, then our canal collapsed. And, Luckily Pete and Robert were right on top of it. They closed down the Franklin Canal right away, the head gates. And we were able to get to it, and then I spoke with John Ballou, and they got a crew on it right away, and then they hired a private company to actually do the work. And Jay and Pete and a couple of our other guys, David Ortega and Robert, spent a long weekend there, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they had the project finished by Monday afternoon. So we had water back in the Franklin on Tuesday.
That's the sewer line there that, so this was a old, bituminous clay line, 60-plus years old, that had been abandoned partially but not properly plugged. This normally would have been, we had, quite a few years ago, was when Mr. Archuleta was at the, part of the lawsuit settlement for the right-of-way use, right? Which, I don't remember the year, 2008, is that?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, so 2008, we had an agreement where we went and identified all these locations, and then we requested that the city come back with their documentation on what was at these crossings. So that process was a fairly big process, and we did our part of it. They paid for it, they paid us to do that work. And we created these big books and GIS stuff, right, of all these things, and then we turned it over to them, and their part was to go back and give us engineering drawings, all these, so we could assess these. So 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and then they
Never did.
chose not to complete their part of the agreement. I think we were so tired from all the litigation and all the controversy at that time that we just let it go, right?
Probably.
I mean, Judy and I, we made a decision that we weren't gonna go back to court. But we're meeting with John this week, and we're gonna bring it back up to say, hey, you know, we really need to know what you guys got underneath our canal. I mean, remember, this was put under there 60 years ago, so.
Yeah.
It wasn't it wasn't properly identified. And then I think we need to find all of these that are truly abandoned and have them plug them, have them fill them full of cemented soil.
Yeah, why did it collapse down? Do y'all know why?
It's just 60 years old and it's vitreous clay.
I think it was a joint that,
It just rotted through from the water. You know, that vitreous clay eventually erodes and becomes soft.
plus, they did say that stormwater came through
Found
the
its way in.
same street with, you know, those big ponds that are
Yeah.
for Pat Golf?
Yeah, but that was done.
Did you see a
how
seepage
many years
line
ago
in
was
there?
that?
See, so that's
We
what I
put
was
a
curious
60
whether there's still water somehow in there. But anyway, okay.
Okay, so that was 4 years ago when stormwater came through.
Mhm.
You know, we don't know what precipitated it. You know, could they have possibly agitated it at that time? I'm sure there was. It was a boring. But the problem here was that it was an abandoned line that should have been filled when it was abandoned, and it wasn't. And then we never would have this problem. So you turn a $2,000 project into, what, about
Yeah,
a $100,000 project?
Probably more than that.
a lot more than that.
Yeah, around the clock. So anyways, we need to get on top of that with them. And John will help us still. And he's the one that spent the $100,000, not us.
Mhm.
What was it replaced with?
PVC, another line. It's abandoned going across.
Yeah.
And they
We
replaced it.
installed, 2 years ago, a new sewer line. They installed an 18-inch sewer line adjacent to it, about 15 feet downstream.
Yeah, so they should have at that time, instead of just leaving that line open, they should
Cancel it out.
have canceled it out.
But there were still 8 homes, I think, connected
It's
to
still
it.
active. Yeah, those still active.
Oh, was?
They never,
Yeah.
there was 3 to 5 homes, or maybe 8.
So what are they doing now for those homes?
They never transferred them over.
Yeah.
They transferred them over the week line.
Yeah,
There's gonna be new lines in town,
they connected them now.
yeah. Funny thing about it is in that area there, a week prior to the collapse,
They didn't invent it.
a drunk driver fell into the Franklin Canal right in that area. So,
So it could be related, yeah.
What
she
happened?
was drunk.
What happened?
A week prior,
That car.
that car fell into the Franklin Canal, exactly in that location.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Well, we get the information. They fell again Saturday.
And then they fixed it, and somebody ran into it, I think yesterday again,
But they,
into the fence.
Again?
Again, it's been 3 weeks in a row.
the person had no insurance. Lisa looked into it and got a police.
Well, it was really shallow. Well, it wasn't that shallow. I mean, it's pretty deep.
It was about.
So how's the water
not even 3
put the-
3 feet below the line.
But still, I mean, the car, it doesn't have that much.
I don't think it had anything
I don't
to
think
do
it
with
had
it,
anything
it's
to do
just
with
a
it.
coincidence.
Just pure luck.
Yeah, it'd be really hard to transmit 3 feet buried. I mean, you could, that's a long ways underground to fill anything with a car going in a canal.
So
Unless we had an earthquake we didn't know about, that could have done it.
downstream from here, Group 2 didn't finish irrigating. We had to cut them down, cut them off, and then we had some cotton farmers that were ready to start taking water. We had to hold them off. So that's why we applied the pressure, and we gave them a deadline of having water back in on Monday. Well, they finished on Monday, and we had water back in on Tuesday.
Oh, the cotton years would be great.
I will save this for later, I guess.
So that's it, unless you all have any questions with that.
Yeah, in that case, on the agenda comes district engineers reports.
We're jumping around a lot, aren't we? So this is the cumulative combined storage for the reservoir for this year. So we started off in the 150,000 acre foot range. And so what this plot is the water that's coming in and the water that's going out. So we have them together as total, is looking at sort of like your checking account. Obviously, we're using some of that money right now, but in terms of our water budget for the year. So we're obviously, we've plateaued off now from and one of the reasons for these sediment activities, we had such a productive and high flows for so long that the river moved a lot of sediment, which is what you'd expect to happen in a year like this. And so that's why there's sediment issues on the river, because it's been an unusually productive year on doing that. This is sort of a conservative estimate, so it looks like for the year that, and this isn't usable water, you have to take off some minor adjustments and some other things, and there's some calculations, but for practical purposes, what we were hoping to do was get to close to 1 million this year, but it would have been a real significant amount. We're getting pretty close. And if we had some upstream monsoons and some other things, we'd see on doing that. But again, this doesn't have any of the compact numbers in it or any of that stuff. So this is something, you guys only get to see this curve about once every 30 years. So
Yeah, that's beautiful.
cherish the moment.
What does the Series 1 signify? Al, is that anything, or is it just?
Oh, no, I just
that's
should have
just
deleted
your-
that. That's just,
Okay.
that's the data from Earth that's
Okay.
plotted up there. So I'll set it up. So yeah, that's, I wish we could, if we could see that every year, we would have a problem.
How much water's coming in right now?
There's not very much. You guys know 500 acre feet a day or 250
For
centimeters?
info, I think it's about 1,000 CFS.
Oh, is it? I
It's
think it
all
was
Still
confused.
good enough.
It's still good.
I thought it had dropped off.
How much was
About half
released?
that. What?
Released in comparison to.
Well, we release, depends, we change the release every day. Robert said.
Ecobiology.
is higher than yours.
No, we're dropping storage right now. We should be completing
It's
storage.
going up.
Well, everything's dynamic, there's a whole bunch of numbers go into this, and so, yeah, if you wanna look at the rate of change, it's changing every day, and there's all sorts of noise, and this is a cumulative curve. It's a sort of a mass balance curve, just looking at the total, how much water we had available for using this year, roughly, approximately. So we have roughly 900,000 acre feet, which is great, we haven't had that much in a long time. And we're gonna have a significant, Robert will talk about, we'll have a significant amount of reserves in
We'll carry over 200 plus.
Yeah.
When's the last time? You weren't around when the last time.
No, once, you got to do it once.
We, in fact, one of my, I
Six.
think the second year of the operating agreement, we went over our ceiling at 232,000 acre feet that we can carry over. Anything over that, we have to transfer to
Seven,
EBID. And we transferred over, I think it was 61,000 acre feet to EBID that year.
That was 06 though, right?
That was 09 or 10, I
Yeah,
think.
I think
It was a year or two after we signed the operating agreement.
Oh, okay.
So changing gears on that, that was just giving you this. This was a capital improvement project with the city of El Paso under the drain maintenance program, which is the Montoya Main. This is Mulberry, and this is the Montoya Drain, which goes underneath it. So we had a culvert failure there last year. We upgraded that culvert. They paid for the materials costs. We paid for the labor. For various reasons, I'll go into here in just a second. That culvert that's underneath this, not the canal, not the main, it's still stable, and we don't think there'll be a problem, right, Pete? There, it doesn't look like there's
Right.
any problem to me. But we have the collapse of that culvert that's underneath it. So that culvert will have to be reinstalled, and we're working through this. This was not an engineered project. It was just there's certain parts of the district that engineering doesn't get involved in on doing that, and this one was, at the time, I probably didn't recognize that it was special conditions, and we should have, and I would have gotten involved, but I didn't recognize the special conditions. We did a similar one that was a little easier downstream of the golf course. That one seems to be stable. I inspected both of these today. But, so there's no threat to the water supply system, which is, obviously a real-time concern. What there was the amount of water that is draining from this area has been constricted at this point, and we're having to pump that water. This is just an enlargement of that area. So again, you can see this is a picture from after we did the construction. This is upstream, this is downstream. This is a 96-inch we installed in here, and it's about 6 feet deep to the top of that, so 14 feet total. 8-foot diameter pipe, 14-foot hole, 6 feet of dirt on top of it. So some of those all contributed to the problem that we have
Plus,
here.
our water table is pretty high there now.
Yeah, I know, I'm getting to that part. Okay, this isn't us, this is just a stock photo from Contact. That's the type of pipe, it's a Duramax pipe. We've used it before, but I don't think we ever used this diameter, right, Pete?
No, I think 48's been the largest.
Yeah, so we worked with a smaller diameter. As you get to a bigger diameter, there's other techniques. On any pipe, especially a large diameter pipe, it's only as strong as what's called a haunch. The haunch is the dirt, this is the haunch right here, you're looking at the haunch. So haunch, H-A-U-N-C-H, is the area underneath the pipe that you're compacting. You can see they're compacting this, making sure that they have it at optimal moisture. He's over here compacting on this side, on setting it up, because that's what makes the pipe strong, not the pipe. This is not ours. This is a stock photo of contact of another location, showing them building the haunch. It looks like it's in our, maybe it's from us that are, no, we never did a 96, so it couldn't have been us. So this is, and we weren't able to do this. This is where the project became complicated when they installed it. There was, the groundwater table was too high, and we didn't dewater for this project, right?
Correct.
So the failure of dewatering really is what made the ability to compact the haunch, which is what supports the pipe. Without the haunch, you don't have a stable pipe. So we never got a compacted haunch on this. It was installed, and because of the groundwater, and then as the water table came up from the irrigation season, this is the picture, we're pumping around it. So as this water table became higher and higher, because when we installed it, the water table was about 4 feet below where it is today. It was still hard to install down in the haunch area. It caused that whole pipe to fail. Everything saturated, became liquefied, and just gave way. And so the pipe could not support the 6 feet of overburden on it. That's thousands and thousands of tons of weight. And it was never designed to do that. The pipe isn't designed to take that without being haunched properly. Once you can imagine, once you lose the circular shape, that's where the strength is. So the haunch maintains that. You're packing dirt under the bottom to keep it round. Once it becomes oval, then it's just a matter of time till it collapses. Because every distortion becomes less and less strong. So that's just the way pipes fail. So it's a classic, what we call a classic collapse.
It wouldn't uplift, right, the pipe?
No, I don't think it was uplift. We had some uplifting problems when we were installing it and some
The
stability.
water was underneath the water table,
Right.
I don't know.
It should have been, the inlet, it was on grade, right? And so it should have always been hydrostatically balanced. There's no buoyancy involved. And plus we had thousands of pounds on top. So no, what happened was that haunch, whatever compaction we did have, we lost that when it saturated. And it became liquid, and the whole thing just couldn't support the weight. So I think I got the failure diagnosed properly. So right now we're pumping around it. Any of these things, what's the good side of it is the drain isn't very long. I mean, what do we have, 3 miles upstream of here from the?
If that much,
Yeah,
I think it's more like a mile.
just 1 mile. So this is the beginning of the drain, so we don't have a huge amount of flow. Someplace, what do you think that thing's pumping right now? 5 CFS?
Yeah, it had a 36-inch pipe in there prior to this one.
Yeah, we upgraded for stormwater, the city. So anyways, we're not a huge amount of water in that area, but it is the water line. One thing that contributed the timing of the failure, so it was stable, it wasn't properly compacted in the haunch, so it probably would have failed eventually no matter what. But what triggered the failure about 10 days ago or 8 days ago was that the water table in that area came up significantly after an irrigation. The water table is very high in that area. If you look at this area, what we have is we have a water table in the river that's higher than it's ever been because of sediment issues. So right now we have a high demand, so we have a lot of water in the river. That this water, and that's that previous study on the flood risk that we talked about. We were seeing exceptionally high water levels that cause the groundwater to be higher. We also have some issues with this lake that are nearby, and this is a heavily irrigated small tract, right, Robert? Right. And Robert swears he only gives everybody 5 inches, right? But there's a lot of water. Just got applied. So all those things resulted in, and you guys, when was the last time you saw this? Anybody Art remembers?
When all the water came back after we cleaned off all the brush.
And I think even the lake that was right next to it was dry, and then they filled it up.
Right, yeah. For years, and I guess they got a well or something to fill it up. I don't know.
No, they
Plus
got,
there's 2 reservoirs, one by the railroad tracks and then one above the railroad tracks.
Plus about, 6 weeks ago, we had a major rain event here, right?
right.
Yeah, so we had a downpour here, a really significant short-term runoff event to fill those 2 lakes up, which are just out of sight. They're just right over here to the right in this area. So this whole area, as exhibited, and I went down there and looked at it, and Pete looked at it, as we got stability, but this was not caused, had anything to do with the culvert failure. This occurred prior or during the culvert failure. So this is a sign of the water table's higher than it's ever been in that area. So we've got to go downstream of here and figure out what's going on. We know we've got some culverts that are scheduled to be improved that are downstream of here that are backing water up. So this like I say, we've got our work cut out, but we're gonna go ahead and stabilize this. There is stormwater discharge into this facility. Upstream of here, there's a discharge point right here, or it's farther up, a little farther up, that takes runoff from a stormwater pond on the east side of I-10 all the way into this area. So it's a very rarely used discharge. Probably if there's a rain event in the area, you'll get some water from it, but we really don't get a large amount of water except when you have like a 100-year storm event, because there's a regulating reservoir or a storm detention reservoir upstream of it. We're looking at the master plan. That's why we went with the 96. This was to handle for 100-year floods. Normally, like I say, the one we replaced was 30 inches. We mobilized a stormwater pump as contingency, so that right now we have the small pump managing the groundwater problem, and it's adequate. It's keeping up with it.